Namaste, India from the Philippines. Good afternoon, India. First of all, thank you to all our live listeners from all corners of India and around the world to my podcast interview with India's very own Dr. Ishani Naskar, Professor of Politics from Rabindra Bharati University and an award-winning expert. Good afternoon, Professor Naskar.
Good afternoon. Namaskar from India, and thank you for having me on your show. It's a privilege to come here and to get connected with you. You're my old friend. It's a very nice opportunity to talk over the program, and I look forward to an interesting interaction.
Right, thank you also for accepting our kind invitation to be with us today. Now, the world still battles with the contagious coronavirus pandemic, but major powers are in the next level of clinical testing for possible vaccine to save humanity. How is India faring this race to the vaccine, and what can we offer to the world? To help us in this discussion, we ask the following questions to Professor Naskar. First, India's lockdown began in March 25 and extended several times to expire this Sunday, according to the news. Our country has now reported more cases than China, where the virus first emerged in December 2019. Although deaths remain much lower than China, there were reported cases of clashes erupted between the police and stranded migrants. Can you please give us a glimpse of India's experience?
I would like to just request you to be a little louder, please.
Right. Can you please give us a glimpse of India's experiences during the national lockdown, the bravest action from your government to do so, having the second largest population in the world?
Right. A very pertinent question, and the answer is not going to be an easy one.
Right.
At the outset, let me say that what I'm going to speak in response to your question is entirely an academic and personal point of view. It doesn't of this position. And I, as a very simple citizen and a social scientist, have a couple of responses to your question. The most important part of it is that, look, as you said, that India is one of the most populous countries of the world. And Corona being an unknown enemy, as strategy experts, we have always talked about non-traditional security, and now it is just looking at your face. So India's lockdown strategy in the first place has been a preventive one and not a reactive one, which is something I believe I would like to say that nobody in the world had done it, because we have been hearing about this virus from various ends, and then at late January we had the first case, and the lockdown was done in the third week of March, as you may be aware of that, and it was done when the death rates were not really remarkably or alarmingly high. So it was a good strategy for the government to do it. Now, what is the rationale of the preventive strategy? The rationale of the preventive strategy is to prevent a kind of a medical chaos, and have not end up with a messy medical infrastructural system, because the country wouldn't be ready to handle as lethal and as fast spreading disease or an unknown virus as the COVID, as we all hear about, changing every now and then. So the idea of a preventive lockdown is to set the medical infrastructure in place as far as one can do it, and at the same time have a set of rules and responsibilities laid down by the government for the citizens and all the people of the country. And it would kind of determine the relationship between the state and its citizens and the people living here in a manner that could prevent further spread. Well, that is, of course, as I always say, that is always not there is no golden rule as to how one does it. But at least you have a surveillance system where you can actually figure out how the lockdown is proceeding, what is happening to the spread, and you have hopefully some final solution at the end. Now, there are an endless number of, there are now many kind of studies being done from various aspects as to how the lockdown has been productive or not productive. And there have been mathematical models of simulations where experts have been actually trying to figure out whether an early preventive lockdown will actually yield the results that has been, at the back of the mind when the government decided to have a lockdown. There are two things that I think. One is the question of social distancing.
Okay.
And the social distancing, what I would say, would kind of control the transmission within a region. And the other part of the lockdown is, restricting the geographical movement, given the kind of population that Indian government is looking at, right? So the idea is to control transmission within a space, but at the same time also kind of ensure that there is not a geographical spread. So geographical spread and also kind of trying to contain it within a space, given the kind of density in certain parts of the country we have. So these are the two parts that actually work.
Maybe know which areas or states in India that were highly affected by COVID?
Well, there are certain states, I'll come to that, but to add to what I was saying. So the question is, now that the lockdown perhaps will have to be, all over the world, people are now getting impatient, and people have realized the lockdown is not the ultimate strategy. There must be some other way to deal with it, one has to live with it, right? So what we're trying to do is, we have kind of not actually contained, but we have tried to slow down the virus. But having said that, the point is, once the movement starts taking place, then there, as apprehended and as expected, there shall be a steep rise in the numbers, which is happening for the last maybe 10 days as the movements have started taking place. And why? Then what is the rationale? The critics are questioning whether the lockdown was a success or not. Here's the question which you're asking is, which are the states? Now you can have a kind of idea as to where the concentrated areas are, where the more number of cases are being located, like the states of Maharashtra, the case of Karnataka, the case of Gujarat, right? These are the areas, Madhya Pradesh, these certain states which have a concentration of, and these are now being marked as red states, red zones, right? So there the movements have to be more restricted. People have to be, more taken into public health system interventions have to be more serious. And this also, Dr. Cabalza, the lockdown is a fantastic example as to how, the government and the state equations also pan out. Because the central government will not do everything at the ground level because they cannot understand the ground reality. So here is the role of the state, where the state actually can also decide and also intervene and also at times take advice. The Prime Minister has been taking advice from the different state ministers. Even at every lockdown strategy, we have now 4 phases, as you know, undergoing. So this keeps on happening. So perhaps there have been certain loops. One of the biggest loops is the issue of the migrants that we are talking about.
Right.
The migrant crisis. So there are critics who say that it has been done very hastily, very quickly, just off the cuff kind of thing, and at times it sounds very cruel, where migrants are having a lot of issues, their livelihood's gone, they're stranded, things like that. But perhaps one missing the point at the same time that this window gives the governments of the state also to ramp up their, medical facilities, to take testing to a point, tracing, contact tracing, things like that. So somehow the infrastructure is apparently in place. Now whether it is in place is what will come in the future when we see a spike. Right? That is how it will happen in the future.
I like the word that you mentioned about preventive strategy. Now we discuss about the exit strategy because everyone knows that we are looking for or searching for the vaccine. And only this week, President Donald Trump admitted that he graduated from taking a 2-week course of taking hydroxychloroquine. And I think last month, India sent a powerful message to the U.S. that it would not export this anti-malarial drug. Although we should clarify the matter that the ban was already lifted, and only this week, the World Health Organization temporarily suspended the clinical trials of this drug as a potential treatment for COVID-19. Now, as of May 9, there are 8 candidate vaccines. This is information just for our listeners that are currently in the clinical evaluation phase for COVID-19. But according to the WHO, more than 110 candidates are in the clinical evaluation phase. Now, India also flexes its influence in the WHO. As our Health Minister, Dr. Harsh Vardhan, I don't know if I pronounce it properly, his name, took charge of the WHO's executive board as its chairman last May 22. Reports see that Indian multinational pharmaceutical and biotechnology company, Chipla Limited, is reported to have been working on various multiple therapies for treating coronavirus. Can you further tell us the insider's news on India's proactive measures on this endeavor?
Yeah, I guess, Dr. Cabalza, there are two parts to your question. One is the question of the exit strategy which you're taking on, and what are the frontiers of medical research that India is looking at, given that the pharmaceutical sector is a huge sector, and what kind of contribution we can do towards the prevention and perhaps a cure for this deadly disease. Now, as I was talking from what I was saying, the exit strategy is, I would say, a staggering exit strategy. What is the government using? Because really, nobody is in a position to say when a final solution is ahead. Okay, in terms of actually finding a cure or a vaccine. So the idea of the government has been to wait and watch and see how people are, taking the lockdown very seriously, and what are the challenges that are emanating from the lockdown strategy. One being the issue of life and livelihood. So life and livelihood is a debate that has been there all the time, and the Honorable Prime Minister of the day has used the Hindi word called "jaan hai, to jahan hai." That if you're living, then you can actually have a livelihood. So, as you see, from the third phase to the fourth phase, there have been gradually easing of the restrictions, depending on, as I said, locating geographically which are the areas which are challenging. And by the fourth phase, we have actually had a lot of discount, a lot of restrictions being opened up. But at the same time, because of the restrictions that have been moved away, some of including movement of people, which is, as you know, the movement of the people is one of the biggest challenges India now faces. And it is not only a question of migrants, it is also a question of a lot of people who had gone for, some kind of treatment to another part of the country, or they have gone for personal business or family matters, or students, people like us who travel. Perhaps I would have gone to Bombay, could have stranded in a conference, and we'd be held up for 3 months. So these are the people who are now starting to move, and they are the potential carriers. So the challenge in the fourth strategy as we exit around 31st May is how to deal with the spread. And mind you, the spread is now also going to go to the non-urban areas. Everybody doesn't move from a city to city. They're workers, they're migrants, they're daily laborers who live in suburban areas, who live in villages, in different districts of a particular state. And so now they're returning. They have to be returned because they're also getting impatient. They want to find that their provisions are finishing, they're financially drained out. So it is also a humanitarian challenge that one has to deal with. And at the same time, so now the challenge comes at two levels. You have located certain extremely strong hotspots, which are almost like super red zones, and they are the cities which are overcrowded.
Right.
The 4 metropolises and another 7 cities that have been identified, over 11 cities in all of India, which are supposed to be the super spreaders. Mm-hmm. And so these are the areas that the post-fourth strategy will perhaps, I think, I dare say, we'll see an extension of the lockdown. But the other areas will be easing. So that means that the government also has to ramp up testing and actually push for vaccination and medical therapy. That comes to the second part of your question. As you said, that India is actively participating. We have been participating in what is the WHO Solidarity, which is, an international, global kind of alliance. Everybody is tampering to find vaccines and some kind of cure and thorough cure. As of now, there are a couple of companies who have actually been pioneering this in India, at least. As you said, Cipla is one of them who have earlier started looking at drug trials. And as you know, the drug trials will not happen overnight. So they will have to go through several rounds and several tests from animals to humans. I'm an expert, but I believe what I gathered from reading and hearing around me, that it is going to take a period of time. The government has allowed a couple of companies to move over with drugs. And what is pertinent here, Dr. Cabalza, I think, is not finding new drugs immediately. That would perhaps depend on reading the genome structure, doing a lot of further study, and time is running out fast. So what India, I think, is doing is looking at existing drugs and see how they can be reapplied. They can be permutation and combinations. For instance, as you said, that India has been supplying the HCQ, okay, which is the hydrochloroquine, okay, hydroxychloroquine, which was in huge demand, and India was ready to supply. It's basically an anti-malaria and other kind of drugs, so this drug was said to have given some kind of a preventive covering and help in the cure, not cure, but help in the cure of the drugs. And now, of course, there are issues that are cropping up because people are saying people with heart conditions are not supposed to be administered this kind of drug. So the point here, Dr. Cabalza, is that as the virus also starts mutating very fast, right? It is mutating into different strands. So the drugs that are being put into use are also have to be used according to that. So there are several strands of, I would say, medicinal proposals and researches taking place in India as worldwide. And the fantastic drug called the Remdesivir, which is in the US, they are using it. That is also doing the rounds. But in India, the drug that is being actually looked into very seriously is called Favipiravir. Favipiravir is an antiviral drug that is being looked by most of the companies, and certain companies like Mark and Strides Farmers. Mark is a very renowned Indian pharmacist, and Strides Farmers, they are allowed to go into human trial. In fact, they're going to the third stage of it and have been cleared by the Drug Control Authority here. So this is one part where you're trying to have antiviral drugs. You're also trying anti-HIV drugs, which can solve combinations like ritonavir and liponavir and things like that. And the other strand is trying to find out the vaccine. Now, in finding vaccine, one thing again has been thought about is the BCG vaccine, which is used for, which India is a huge supplier, and Serum Institute of India actually has been doing that for ages. Now, there are other companies which are also coming in. Some people, Serum Institute has been in collaboration with Oxford, which is trying to produce the premier vaccine, trying to produce a vaccine. So there are several projects, I would say, and there is virtually a race. Even within the countries, various companies are racing against each other to find some cure as fast as possible. And having said this, is one more area about which we generally don't speak about, because it is India, we should speak about it, is there is also a push for traditional medicine.
All right.
The government of India, which has a ministry called Ayush, which has got traditional medicine, homeopathic medicine, is also being put into action.
In fact, by using the traditional medicines, are there recoveries that you saw based from medical statistics?
Could you please be allowed a little bit? I'm sorry.
By using the traditional medicine that you mentioned, did you see some recoveries of patients?
No, what these traditional medicines are trying to do is giving you a preventive shield. Now what I think most of the unsaid word in the country or the government is going towards herd immunity. So if you want to find a kind of a preventive, you will hope that the people of the country are far more immune to these kinds of viral attacks. So therefore, herd immunity. I for myself have looked into the Ayush, advisory. There are certain things one can do at home very comfortably, have a couple of, so-called prescribed traditional medicine, which apparently is supposed to push up your immunity. So nowhere do these traditional medicines yet claim to have found a cure.
But that is advised by your Ministry of Health as well?
And that is advised by the Ministry of Traditional Medicine, which is India Medicine. So it has been said very categorically, and I would suggest, if you have the time, Dr. Cabalza, to go into the Ayush, website, and you will find a set of these kind of preventive measures that are being set as an antipyretic, anti-inflammatory, these kind of things, which are supposed to immune you against such viral attacks.
Okay, now let's talk about the economic downturn and the psychological anxiety brought by the pandemic. India's lockdown came in 4 phases, I heard, and I have spoken to our friends from Europe and Latin America, and they see a bleak economic future as well, and that is expected. In your analysis, what are the sentiments of the Indians about your country's economy, and how are you going to cope up with this pandemic?
You see, the point is the economy is obviously sliding, and that is happening all over the world. But for a developing country like India, an economy that is sliding down fast is not very good news. Though the IMF at the point of time was speaking, saying that there shall be some amount of positive development, positive growth, right? In China and India will still hold on to a mere positive growth. The rest of the world will see a negative growth. But very recently, the Governor General of the RBI, which is the Reserve Bank of India, which is the Central Bank of India, has apprehension that they can hold on to the negative, positive growth, and the media may slightly be negative. Now, the biggest challenge in this is, you see, the economy is largely run by the informal sector. There's a huge informal sector, and there are huge amounts of micro, small, medium-sized industries, which we call MSME economy, right? These two are the areas where the big hit will take place. In fact, MSMEs, if I may say, were contributing to about 6.6%, a little over 6% to the manufacturing GDP, and almost 25% to the service sector. So that is a very serious, because it employs grossly or roughly 120 million people, if not more. And I'm giving rough estimates. And it was expected that MSMEs in these sectors would contribute to the GDP by 2025. There is a vision for the 2025, almost 50%. So you see what I'm saying? It is that it's going to be, and this sector has been largely hit. So the government of India has been trying to support. You see, when the lockdown started happening and people started losing their jobs, daily workers, migrants, informal sector people have been really indulged up. So the first priority of the government has been to provide support to these people. And you must understand that the government of the day does not know how long the lockdown will continue. And so when you have revived economic activity, so your priorities have to be providing food and shelter and medical support to the people who have been badly hit, largely, as I said, the informal sector people who have been earning daily wages. A lot of people have been losing jobs very fast. So, in fact, way back in somewhere in the mid part of the lockdown, the government of India, the Pradhan Mantri Garib Yojana, has given $24 billion as a food aid program, which is pretty big, right? But government of the day has been trying to dole out certain, discounts in terms of, people like us who have got EMIs have been asked not for 3 months, you can go away EMI, right? And so looking to happen. But now that the government is thinking of opening up, the fourth phase has seen the government of India under Modi ji has announced a package of 20 lakh crores to push up the economy. Now that sounds really big because it is almost 10% of the GDP. That is 10% of the GDP. And since the announcement, there have been 4 phases of clarification analysis by the ministry itself, the minister, the commerce minister and the state minister, who have actually tried to address different sectors. And one of the most debated sectors have been the fate of the informal sector workers, the migrants and the laborers. So they have allotted money according to that. There has been huge amount of liquidity. there have been criticisms about this economic packages, actually how much of it will actually reach to the needy. For instance, there has been some packaging street vendors, street food. Street food is very famous in India, as you know, also. So there are hundreds of people, thousands of people, even lakhs of people who are actually street food vendors. But even if they are given money, if they were given aid, the point is, how do you generate demand? If there are not people enough to buy, there is no money in the pockets of the people, how do they generate demand? So therefore, you have to compensate the package with the vendors, and also the capacity of the buyers to buy from the vendors. You see, this is my point. So they are trying to, so the liquidity has been taken. Aspect of issues. People have been asked not to pay their loan so that you have money in your pocket so that you can generate demand and buy to promote consumers. And at the same time, there are certain sectors that have been privatized, which is very, very interesting. The defense sector is privatized. The space sector is now being privatized. The power is going to be privatized. So people are going to come from outside and put in money, hoping that the FTIs would be boosted. But here, Dr. Prakash, we have talked, I would disappoint if I said, but the government, the minister, Prime Minister Modi ji has said that we have to be Atmanirbhar Bharat. What is Atmanirbhar? To be self-dependent. So now you realize that the economy is going to take a big turn. It is going to take a big turn where we will concentrate on production within the country. And as I said, try to put in life into the MSMEs. One of the areas where the MSMEs are now doing much better is producing medical equipment and medical gears, equipment. So this is where India is now trying to have. And states are being asked to boost the economies as according to the local demands. But it is going to be a pretty, difficult one. One more thing I would like to add before I end this point on economy is that there is a fear that some of the companies may see a buyout, especially from our friendly neighbor China. ACME has already had indications of that. So one very interesting thing is that though we are not dissuading FDIs, we have, the Commerce Ministry has come out with a principle which says that the countries sharing borders with India, if they want to invest or if they want to buy, it has to be clear to the Commerce Ministry, which is a clear indication that we are not very welcoming or we are skeptical or apprehensive of flooding in of Chinese, in the thing. So the economy will take a very, very long time to come up, but we have to start somewhere. That's very
right. And that leads to my next question, which is about the leadership vacuum that I'm seeing right now based on my conversations with our colleagues worldwide. And I think this is a normative possibility since every nation state has to protect its own citizens. The me first mentality, although we have seen countries becoming donors by sending clinical aids and to other nations, whether big or small.
Be a little louder.
Carl Taylor cited the amateur charges multiplexity of the world order. Rafael Marchetti described the polarization of coalitions. Oscar Vidarte cited Richard Haswell, polarity of nations. As India's political scientist, how do you assess the dynamics of polity of world system was probably in a post-COVID scenario? Are you seeing China-centric, India-centric, or maybe still a US-led-centric world? What do you see there?
This is a question that I think all international experts are now grappling with. I see a number of writings, pieces, and also webinars happening and podcasts like you're trying to actually fathom as to what will be the post-COVID order. Will we have a structure of sorts or will we not? And as you said, famous Amitabh Bachchan, who had the good fortune of interacting and has spoken about the multiplex kind of thing. And you mentioned about other political scientists making their thing. I think it is very difficult to describe the world order right as it is here. We, of course, say that now from here on we'll have a new way of marking history that is pre-corona and post-corona, or pre-COVID and post-COVID, right? The post-COVID world order, I would like to put it it is going to be a staggering kind of multilateral. Why do I say staggering kind? Because you wait and watch and see. It has to be in phases. We just cannot rule out in one line and say that it's going to be unipolar, bipolar, Indo-centric, China-centric, US-centric. Things like that is something I think we cannot say, because we are dealing with a situation and we are dealing with a challenge which is unseen, unforeseen, and you do not know how to handle it. So, the smartest countries or the unipolar power United States is almost now torturing the economy.
Right.
China is torturing. So, China, there have been a lot of issues about China, and there have been, I have read, people writing about what the COVID orders will be. And somewhere I also read that some people are also thinking that the BRI project may not be, after all, a reality. And what is the reason for that? I thought about it. What is the reason for which the Chinese cannot push for the BRI? And I think BRI has been one of the prime projects which has allowed in China to spread its influence all over the world. Why do I think? Because you see, now physical connectivity is going to be in the back burner. So trade connectivity and things like that will not be of much importance. You understand what I'm going to try to say? So this kind of connectivity is something, at least for the time being, has to be put on the back burner. People have been saying, if you look at the countries which have been largely affected, the countries where you had high level of contact with Chinese trade, Chinese tourism, Chinese trade, Chinese investment. Look at Italy. Italy is one place where the Chinese, after Italy joining BRI in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, the trade with China has increased. Look at South Korea, look at Iran.
Right.
Other places where Chinese have made huge penetrations. So I'm not trying to say that the Chinese, as the general, one of the conjectures, the Chinese have been singularly responsible for this kind of thing.
Right.
The point is, even China will be taken with a pinch of salt in future. Chinese leadership will be questioned. And in fact, I think this is hugely known to all of us. The people are actually questioning about the source of the COVID. Now, whether it was leaked out of the lab or it just was another virus that mutated dangerously and too fast. The fact has been there has been some amount of questioning about the statistics that has been put forward. So even one more thing, Dr. Cabalza, I would like to know is the way Chinese are behaving at this point of time as an international player. And you know very well, you're from Philippines, the issue of the South China Sea has been far from comfortable. It has been very mucky. It has been very pushy. And Chinese have been aggressively building islands. They have been making new prefectures to, put things like that, their assertions. And at the same time, India is having very recently a couple of, serious problems at the border where incursions and, Chinese borders. As I speak now, there are areas in Galwang and Ladakh area, in the Lipu Lake area where Chinese are actually trying to push in. So this assertiveness is something which is not being taken very happily, not only by the neighborhood, even the international community is watching. I completely don't think it will be a G2 kind of a situation between China and the United States, because China and the United States both have their own share of problem. But I certainly think that even Europe now is trying to crawl out of the pandemic, and it will take some while to actually, get back into order.
Right.
Europe has been debating about the Eurozone. Europe has been debating about Brexit. So this has also. So, perhaps Asia is the area that we will look at. And whenever we talk about Asia, we always end up talking about the two Asian giants. And as I said, that China is having its own share of problems. But India, I think, can have a scope of playing a more forthcoming, responsible role.
Right.
Forthcoming. Of course, it does not mean, or I don't indicate that it will be an Indo-centric kind of system. It will not be, for God's sake, system. But India has been always in the, trying to talk about multilateralism all the way. And one more thing I just add when I'm talking about staggering multilateralism, I also look forward to a more responsive and responsible international institutions. I am sorry to say my personal take on WHO has been, it has been far from very doing well. The response has been not very satisfactory, I dare say. Therefore, it is extremely important that multilateral institutions be rejuvenated. And it is here that the major powers have to put in more funds, be more forthcoming, and it's no use making the blame game as to who actually knew the facts and who actually hushed up the facts. It is time to pull up your socks and do your action. So at the end of the day, I think at the most I can say is that since the coronavirus is with there has to be some collective responsibility, and that would mean coming together of states in a more responsible act, along with rejuvenation and reactivation of international institutions. And that is what I think a staggering multilateral order would be looking at.
All right, that's interesting. Okay, for my last question, COVID-19 is a game changer as it has introduced the work from home as an alternative mode and other innovative ways in education and business. For the fact that India is has vibrant economy, in information and technology, communications technology, sciences, engineering, and other prominent fields. How can India inspire us using more powerful innovations?
India is supposed to be, very one of the strong areas, the ICT sector, which is, and R&D, which is the research area, and obviously. One great contribution India can do is to actually have put in a number of put in innovative ideas to deal with this kind of pandemic. I was just saying, India has been trying to look at the opportunities that would come in the post-COVID order, and not only includes rejuvenation of the economy. There have been enough proof that many of country is trying to pack the bags from countries like China. So one probability is that India could be the next destination of global value chains. Now, having said that, and in fact, the government has already started earmarking some maybe 462,000 hectares of land with the hope that the companies who would be packing their bags out of China would also look at India to reset their things, their economic activity. So this is one area one would gain. What I said, as physical connectivity is now going to be something of the past at least for another year or so, digital connectivity, digital space and workplaces will become extremely important. And Dr. Cabalza, as you know, that India has a very, very strong service sector. So I think the service sector in digital connectivity and workplaces is something that India can actually contribute to the international order. We have been doing this for ages, since so therefore, this is one place India has huge potential, and therefore most companies would like to connect with India without actually having to pack their bags and come here, and we can actually provide them service which will rejuvenate the economy. One more sector which I think which could actually have a future is pharmacy and medicine sector, where we have been pioneering. We are one of the largest markets and suppliers of pharmacy. This is because we are living in a COVID world and we'll have to deal with the COVID world for quite some time now. So the pharmacy is something that one has to really, really, really look. And I also think the traditional medicine will have a future of its own. So this is another sector that I think is going to happen. But all said and done, it will depend on how India herself is dealing with this unforeseen crisis of a magnum opus size. How India is going to deal with its own humanitarian crisis, its own migrant labor, how we are going to deal. Now the government of the day is trying to give them job once they come back to their own states, own provinces. So the migration concept is going to be again something that we are not going to do. There will be no internal movements for some time right now. We are having flights, but it's going to be extremely staggering, extremely careful. So I think digital spaces is going to take over very soon, and India would have quite a big stake in the next coming times.
All right, wonderful discussion, Dr. Ishani. Aapka bahut bahut dhanyavad. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Namaskar. Stay safe, stay healthy, and nice to have a good discussion with you, Dr. Cabalza.
Thank you very much. Good day.